You're listening to Business Stories with Ryan Arcaracci, where I speak to business professionals from all walks of life. Thanks for listening, and let's get to it. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Business Stories podcast with your host, Ryan Arcaracci. And as you know, I'm immersed in technology. I've been a tech nerd my whole life, and now I am working in tech with a lot of franchisors and brands. And I think because technology evolves so fast, so quickly, it's really hard to keep up. So my guest today is Marina O'Rourke. She's with Tsource. She's in the tech space, just like me, working with franchisors and franchisees, understand technology. So Marina, thank you for being here. I also know you're a cat lover like me, so we also share that passion. Go cat people. So tell us about your background. You've really been immersed in franchising for a long time, since you've been younger, and you've worked in Subway. I read your history. You worked with Subway and all these brands ever since you were like fresh out of school, I think. So talk to us about your background with that.
Thank you. Well, I was lucky enough to start my career in franchising in 2003 with Fred DeLuca and Subway in Milford, Connecticut. And I spent almost 10 years with the brand. Shortly after I arrived, we did a champagne toast for 20,000 restaurants, and I left at 44,000 restaurants. So really with the heyday, and learned a lot, ran restaurant technology for them. Then I was recruited to go to ServiceMaster, which is totally different. ServiceMaster has 5 home and commercial services brands. So I had to, and also while Subway had been around since 1965, ServiceMaster had been around since early 1900, actually dealing with, the elimination of moths, right? Like things you had to deal with in the 1900s that we don't even think about anymore. Right. And so, and franchisees that had been around for a long time had high expectations in a world where the concept of last mile notifications and mobility solutions were being introduced. So that was a whole different world with franchisees that had much larger businesses, tens of millions of dollars. And so that was really interesting. And I did that for about 6 years in Memphis. And then I was recruited to go work at Tropical Smoothie Cafe, back to my restaurant roots, but a much more nimble and scrappy business than Subway was. So I've spent my career working for franchisors, and kind of the common theme in all of them is a trap that I think many brands fall into just because they're doing the best they can as they grow. And that is that they oftentimes outgrow their technology. And by the time they realize it, they've really outgrown it. And there's a lot of pressure from franchisees, and a lot of times the customers, the marketplace, to make changes. And so part of what we do at Tsource is we get them earlier in the cycle, because I truly believe, as I'm sure you do, that business technology strategy is business strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's talk about, the foundation of laying down the right technology structure, especially on a CRM space, because I think brands, first of all, there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of avenues to look at, and there's people coming from all directions saying, well, you need this and you need that, you need this system, you need this system that works with this system and this to integrate with this. And it becomes this clutter of brands just going, what do I do? I'm so lost, So walk me through kind of your approach to saying, let's just take a step back, and how do we lay down a foundation so they're successful with technology, not just for the next 6 months, but for the next year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, because obviously things are changing rapidly, right?
Absolutely. I think it's really important to take a step back and not just say, well, I heard Salesforce is good, or, somebody uses HubSpot. I heard, it's easy because there's a lot of names that are thrown out there with CRM. And the first and most important thing is to understand is, what are your goals for leveraging the technology? What are the results that you need? And then you got to dig in and say, what are my requirements? because there are a lot of CRM tools out there, and the key is to find the one that is the best fit for your business, and especially in franchising, that you can afford.
Right.
Right. And sometimes, not always, and not with every type of solution, but sometimes we have champagne taste and we've got a beer budget. Now, the great thing about CRM solutions is there are companies like yours that understand the franchise industry and that have solutions that are priced in a way that can work with franchise brands and that understand franchising. That should be part of your requirements. Yeah. I've leveraged tools like Oracle and Salesforce before in franchise brands, and I can tell you that they do not give a rat's patootie about your franchisees. Yeah. And when it's time to raise the price of the licenses, they don't care about the profitability of your franchisees. They don't care if your price point doesn't work for them, and they don't care if the functionality doesn't work for them, so long as you've got a contract in place. And this is why it's important to work with companies that understand franchising and to make sure that you know what you need and why you need it. And then you gotta test drive whatever it is that you're going to use. Yeah. You gotta talk to other folks that are using it. I'm sure that you guys will do this, right? I'm sure that Tether is going to say, hey, here's 5 references. Go talk to these accounts. Ask them any questions you want, and make sure that by talking to other customers that they're having a good experience. Are you getting the implementation, service, support, those things?
Yeah, I think a lot of brands, it's very easy to go, well, we're growing and we're a big brand and we just need to go work with Salesforce, but they need to understand what fits you. Like when you go car shopping and you're a family of 6 kids, you're not going to buy a sports car. You're going to buy a minivan or whatever, right? So I think a lot of brands don't think about where they fit and what questions should brands be asking to make sure they're making the best decision structurally, whether it's with Client Tether or it's with Salesforce or what a HubSpot, because I don't think they realize that it's not a one size fits all, right? It really has to fit. And like, for example, with Client Tether, we're not for everybody. We're really designed for home services. We're designed for franchise development and consultants. But like an insurance brand, we're not really a good fit for that. We're not good for medical. Right. So what do you think what should brands be asking when they are on that search for the right tool?
So I think one of the most important things that any franchise brand should be asking about is, do you support the hierarchy that we use? Some brands have very complicated ownership structures. And I would actually encourage brands to assume that their ownership structures will get much more complex the larger that they grow. I have seen brands that sell, especially in home and commercial services, oftentimes there can be multiple service lines. You may have one brick and mortar location, but you may have multiple licenses. Those license types, I'll just give you an example from for example, somebody like ServiceMaster. Mm-hmm. You might have a license for disaster restoration and for janitorial services, and you might have a reconstruction license. Those are 3 different licenses that may have different royalties, et cetera. So you need to think about yourself when you're twice or 3 times as large as you are now, and you may not know what your hierarchy is going to be. So you want to ask questions like, what's the most complex hierarchy that you support? Yeah. I think you also want to ask some questions that are kind of more pure techie based that you and I would think about, which is, what is your roadmap? Yeah. How do you take recommendations for changes in the software from your customers? Yeah. How often do you do releases? Right? Because you want a technology partner that's going to stay current. Mm-hmm. The buzzword that everybody's talking about is AI. There are a lot of great applications for AI, some of which are great within CRM systems.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys know a little something about how to leverage AI effectively.
Yeah.
Well, you want to make sure that your partner in 5 years, as that technology becomes more robust and mature, and as other technologies come into play that could benefit their application, are they thinking about that? Do they have that thought leadership?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be leading your vendors into the future, dragging them into the future because they're not supporting basic things that you need 5 years from now. So that's the kind of partner that you want to look for, I think. I think those are some important questions to ask.
One thing I find is, especially with CRM and technology, is that a lot of franchisees and brands don't have a strategy in terms of their marketing and sales approach with content and how they create a customer journey. So what I find myself doing a lot is giving them ideas like, are you using video when you're sending out a text or an email? What's that customer experience like? What are they experiencing as a story with your brand? Do you come across that a lot where you feel like a lot of brands don't have a strategy to really be effective with their system? So that franchisees kind of do their own thing and everybody's kind of doing their own thing and nothing is really cohesive and they're not following a strategy that's unified. Do you find that's common?
Yes. And I think for a lot of reasons, brands, when they do their strategic planning, aren't necessarily including the use of technology and creating customer journeys and franchisee journeys when they're choosing solutions for their franchisees. And that's one of the things that Tsource starts with.
Yeah.
As part of requirements, we like to map out your current customer journey, your current franchisee journey, and where are their pain points and friction. So that part of choosing a solution or sometimes optimizing a solution is that we know what the end goal looks like so that we can create delighted customers and delighted franchisees.
Yeah.
And franchisees employees, if they're using the technology, then you want them to find it easy to use and to enjoy it. Because when they don't use the technology effectively. And part of that is, and I'm going to go off on a little tangent here if you don't mind me, change management.
Yeah.
When you're implementing technology or new features and functionality, you have to communicate to your franchisees. You have to communicate to your customers that if it affects them. You have to train your franchisees and their employees on how to use it, and you have to reinforce it.
Mm-hmm.
One stat that I heard recently is that most companies only use about 10% of the features and functionality of the technology that they adopt. Well, that's going to lead to dissatisfaction because so many of the tools that you have are much more robust than you may be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is on the vendor to help brands with that. But brands have a large responsibility too, to make sure that their operations folks are experts, to make sure that they have a committee, could be their franchise advisory committee, or better yet, a technology committee, where folks become super users and advocates to other franchisees. So those are things that I think are really important to help with adoption and stickiness to the tech.
Yeah. What are you seeing as far as when you look at that journey or that process? Where do you see most of the issues? It sounds like to me, in my experience, it's a lot of communication issues, a lot of trouble adapting to the changes too. What are you seeing out there is common?
One of the things that I'm seeing that's common is that when there is a dependency on multiple systems to let's just take, for example, that you're a franchisor and you've got a CRM system and you nurture the lead all the way to closing the deal. Then you need to go into some type of an onboarding process for the franchisee.
Yeah.
That may or may not be within the same system.
Yeah.
But if the data doesn't flow from the system that where you've created and set up this new franchisee to be able to smoothly onboard them, then people have to do manual entry of information that probably already exists in that system. And then they may fat finger that or type it incorrectly. So I feel like integration is where a lot of the dissatisfaction comes in, because there's so much that's interconnected. You sell a franchise, you onboard the franchise, you collect royalties from the franchise, you renew their agreement, right? There's this whole life cycle. And part of that is thinking about that, which can be overwhelming. But as you build that yellow brick road of your technology, as you lay those next bricks in, especially as a growing franchise, you got to always look back and say, okay, when we were small, we didn't need a system to onboard. If our CRM doesn't do that, how do we make sure the CRM talks to the system that does the onboarding? How do we make sure that franchise agreements are reflected in what we use to collect royalties, so we collect the right amount? That's an area that I hear on a fairly regular basis where there are issues. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, yeah, we accidentally sometimes we charge franchisees the wrong amount in royalties. That's not good. And nobody's doing that on purpose. But boy, you want to talk about eroding trust with your franchisees. So
that'll do it.
Yeah.
One area I see too that's like really, I guess, overlooked, I should say, is data. I don't think franchisors understand the data you need when you have 10 locations is one thing. The data you need when you have 100 locations is a whole different ball game. Do you feel like there are areas that franchisors are not looking when it comes to data? Do you feel like there's some gaps in the story they should be, that their technology should tell them with the data? What kind of gaps do you see? Where are they, if so?
I see, especially as brands are growing, that they've got 3 or 4 systems in place, and they are using the internal reporting from those systems to try to tell a story, which can be disjointed, especially if there aren't integrations and the data is not the same. A recent story that I heard was from a very frustrated franchisor that had multiple systems that shared some of the same data elements, but were producing different results. Now they're having a lack of trust in their own systems. Part of that is, how does the data flow from system to system? And then how can you get all of that data into it's simple to you and I, but a data warehouse and build some simple reports. That's actually something that we build for franchisors on a regular basis. And it's not really that hard to do. Most systems today have APIs. It's easy to get the data out and house it in AWS or Azure or Snowflake if you want something more complicated to have what's called an enterprise data warehouse, and use something like Power BI that a lot of folks already have in their Microsoft Office license or other tools like that to create visualization, have reports emailed to people. So I think that, thinking about your data journey is important. And that's a lot for a growing brand to think about. And that's why, knowing when it's time to bring in some help to help guide you with IT is great. And also having trusted vendors that you can have candid conversations with. I mean, to me, the good relationships are when a vendor is your partner, right? When I don't call you a vendor or supplier and I call you my partner, that means we've got a relationship. And when I'm like, gee, I'm not sure what to do about this, great partners are going to help solve those problems.
And I think it's about support too. And I think, the data is so important. I think, especially on the sales and marketing side, I think a lot of brands don't understand how many leads are we getting? Where are they coming from? What's the conversion rate? If location A in market A is doing really, really well, but location C in this other market is not doing so well, having all of that data to compare and contrast and taking a location that's doing really well and having them talk about why they're doing well with other franchisees and the data supporting all that will help tell a story and solve the problem, I think. And I think brands, do you feel like brands overlook that? Like, especially on the sales side, they don't really understand. They think about what's not working, but they also don't look at what is working and why it's
Okay.
working, right? Do you
Yeah.
see that as pretty common too on your end?
Part of it is really understanding the sales cycle and making sure that you sort of understand where you want to capture, what is that sales journey and what are the snapshot points that you want to capture and get data.
Yeah.
Because especially if you're talking about your franchisees, or even if you're talking about your franchise sales team, right? How do you coach and help your franchise sales team or consultants if you don't know actually what they're doing?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about closing deals, because we know that that there are all of these touch points along the way. And in fact, one of the things that I love about your solution is it really can help solve the problem of people not actually responding to leads.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that comes up all too often. I mean, if you have a lead, first and foremost, respond. That is step one in getting a sale. And so just understanding where the behavior is great and helping other people replicate it, and then where there are opportunities to improve. But also, when you've got a system that makes it easy, it makes it a heck of a lot better for the salespeople. That's what I call a frictionless journey, right?
Yeah.
Even simple things like, if I book a meeting, does it automatically create a lead, or do I have to manually create a lead?
Yeah.
I have a lead? Sometimes somebody might just be like, hey, Ryan, my brother Joe's interested in buying a franchise. Would you get the contact information? It's not a lead that comes in through the system.
Yeah.
It should be easy, to not have to manually do every single step along the way. Right. Systems that streamline how you interact with them and how many times you have to type the same information. That's part of what I think franchisors want to look at.
And I could tell you that the speed to lead is important, because I know in my own experience, when I've had a lead come in, and our system does automated calling, so my phone rings right away. And 90% of the time that lead says, I literally just filled out a form and you're calling me, and that's amazing. And I say the same thing every time. I go, that's our system. That's exactly what the system is designed to do. I don't think people realize, even with consultants, they don't realize how important it is to build that relationship right off the bat exceptionally well and make a good impression from the get-go. Because once they feel that from the beginning, that just carries through the rest of the relationship. And I don't think people realize how important responsiveness is, and how important it is to make the customer or the candidate feel like someone's actually listening to them in a world that's full of just noise and distractions, right? So I think that is important. Would you agree with that? Just building the relationship really well off the bat is really important to the journey.
It's always about the relationship.
Yeah.
When people look at a lead as being purely transactional versus a relationship, I think that that's a mistake. I think it's easy to do, because one, how I treat you, it may not pay off right away. If I'm trying to sell franchises and you decide you're not interested, or you get cold feet, that doesn't mean a year from now that you won't come back and remember how Ryan treated me when I had that initial conversation. I just believe that in that concept of 2 degrees of separation, it used to be 6, I think it's 2. You just never know what your interaction is going to mean to somebody, and being polite and being prompt and listening to people, it just goes a long, long way. Right. And it's not necessarily about what can you do for me today. People remember that. And sometimes, something like 50 or 60% of your buying decision is made emotionally
Mhm.
versus intellectually. And
Yeah.
that all goes into that. How I'm treating you, how I make you feel
Yeah.
is important.
100%. Yeah. I want to kind of wrap this up and tie back to Tsource and really the value that you all are providing brands. Can you give us kind of the overall scope of what you do in terms of solutions for brands and the value you provide them?
Yes, I really appreciate you making time for that. So we provide brands typically between 75 and 500 locations with right-sized, value-based technology solutions and resources. We are here to help brands leverage technology to grow profitably. We truly believe that technology is a profit driver when it's implemented well. And if you can do things right the first time, you can save a lot of money and a lot of time when most brands have precious few resources. And we share the values of many of our franchisors that we work with. We do the EOS operating system, and we care a lot about transparency and honesty and doing the right thing and delivering value. Our values are important to us, and it's part of the reason that we align well with franchising. I truly believe franchising is the engine of opportunity for America, and I just love being a part of it.
Yeah, no, I think we align there too, because we are very much happy to be partners with franchisors and transparent. And we'll be the first company to tell somebody we're not a fit. You know, if we're not a fit, we're going to tell you that. It's not about money or anything like that. It's like, look, we want to make sure at the end of the day you're successful. That's really what's important to us. And if we can be a part of that, that's a great thing. So this has been good, Marina. I think it's been really helpful. It's always good to talk to you. So if people have questions or they want to get involved with Tsource or want to know more or just have somebody who's a resource like yourself or me, how can they get a hold of you?
You know, the easiest thing they can do is text me at 203-521-3576 or shoot me an email at MOROURKE@tsource.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Marina. It's been good talking to you, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Hey, this is Ryan. Are you in the market for a customer relationship management system for your business? Well, before you drop a dime, pick up my book, Customer Relationship Management Exposed, now available on Amazon. Just search Customer Relationship Management Exposed and my name, RyanArcoraci. This is your definitive guide to saving money before purchasing a CRM, so pick it up today.